1962. Henry County hasn't won the region in this gym. This gym was built after they won the region. We have won 8 region games, 8 games in the region tournament since this gym was built. It takes a whole mentality shift from a lot of people to accomplish that. I think we made strides in that this year. It, without a doubt, is the next step in the process, and one that I think is in reach. The game is so much bigger than this arena. It's bigger than the players, bigger than wins and losses. It's life skills, challenges, responses. The game itself is such a teacher in a challenging way. That's what always drew me to it, was the challenging nature of it. It has just created so many opportunities. I hope that I don't just take from, I hope that I can give back to the game of what it's given me. There was probably a 10 or 12 year span that didn't touch a ball. I just dropped it and moved on. Now I'm back coaching on the same court that I played on.
Love what you do. Love each other. Chase our standard with the most passion you've ever chased in your life. Don't do that.
My name's Derek Tingle. I'm the head boys basketball coach and athletic director at Henry County High School. I was born and raised in Henry County, played here through all of my youth, middle, and high school years. Graduated from here in 2000, left, and now I'm back coaching on the same court that I played on. The very first interview I did, I said in that interview that there was, there are no goals, anything short of winning a state tournament. And, I still believe that. I don't think that there's any reason to aim low and be proud of hitting all the time. I think if you're not aiming high, and even if you miss, I think aiming high and missing is better than aiming low and hitting all the time. So, I still hold true to that. And I probably got ridiculed a little bit for saying that and believing that. We're not a school that's rich in state tournament appearances and region championships and really even district championships. I can't bring myself to accept mediocrity, and I won't. I never will. That was the goal. That still remains the goal, and I understand that there are targets along the way that we have to hit first. But the ultimate is still that.
They had two starting fives that came together for Henry County in 1962.
I don't think there's another place like it to play high school basketball. There's other, gyms in the state that are nice gyms and good atmospheres and all those things, but I don't have that feeling in other places, and we try to bestow that on the kids that maybe don't get that yet, as to how historic and how important this place is to 8th Region basketball, to the people that grew up playing in here, the people that come back here to watch a tournament and just come to games just to reminisce on when they were on this floor. We try to instill that mentality of how significant it is and what a privilege it is to be able to stand on it and play on it every day.
We are what I would call a tweener. We're not a Class A school. We're not a big school. We're a middle school, middle class-wise. So for us to be competitive, and we've been in the regional tournaments. I mean, we get beat. If we came in as a loser, then we might draw Scott County first round or somebody. But we got here.
So the district was, for a very long time, was Shelby County, Anderson County, Eminence, and Henry. And so you had two very big schools, again, two smaller schools. Until they split with Collins, Shelby County was powerhouse. They won the region quite a few times. And then Anderson County would put out some good teams as well. So we had won the district the year before. The coach had left, several players had left. There were a few returning, but we're missing quite a few pieces. And the coach had left in July, so we didn't get summer ball as much and things like that. So we just kind of had to fly the rocket as we built it. I had a great bunch, my first year, great bunch of kids. They worked extremely hard. I learned as much as they did. You just learn in the community. They helped to get me out, get me involved. We lost a close one, first round of districts. And then the next year, they absolutely battled their hearts out. Then the next year, we lost another close one in districts. Didn't make the regional tournament again. And then our third year, which would have been 2014, we won 20 games, made it back to regionals. coming out of COVID, we were at a point where we didn't know if we were going to have a season. Then we finally got a season in January. We didn't know if we were wearing masks or weren't wearing masks. The rules kind of kept changing along the way. But what we did know is we really wanted to play basketball. And I think we just had such an awesome community to help us do that. There were times where we had outdoor practices. There were times where we just weren't sure. We were taking temperatures before games, things like that. And just to put all that behind us and win a district championship, our kids wanted it for the county so much.
Ten, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Dagger!
Game time, baby! Game's over! Game's over. Wildcats 53, Rebels 51. Sam Royalty, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. 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 I will say,
Extremely happy for him because I don't care who it is, just win. I don't care who's leading it. I don't care what sport it is. Just win.
I knew we had a really good team. We had a couple of good guys coming back. I shouldn't say a couple of good guys. We had several good guys coming back. I felt like the cupboard wasn't empty, and it was a chance for somebody. I didn't want to leave somebody or leave the program in a situation where it was worse than I found it. I wanted to leave it in a really good position. I felt like we needed to hire someone who was either extremely dynamic or somebody who was local and knew the lay of the land.
He came to me when he was they first publicized the head coaching job at the high school. And he said, but Mom, they want the person in the high school, they want them to teach. And I just don't know if I'm really a teacher. And I looked at him and went, are you kidding me? You are a teacher. Whether you know it or not, you are a teacher.
I never had any intention of working in a school system, ever.
I think it was hard for him to see himself in my world because this was my world and there were lots of conversations of, well, in the real world, that's what he would say about everything outside of education. And then he came into this world. So I always saw him being almost like a coach and giving that feedback all the time on what to do, how to show a cow, how to lead a cow. So he's always had that side of him that is really good about explaining things in a way that people understand it.
Chelsea said something to me one night because I was at home and she has to listen to me complain a lot. So I was complaining about, just about how the way kids approach things and, going down a rabbit hole of all those things. And she was probably tired of listening to me as she always is. And so she told me I was contemplating on whether I wanted to apply for that position because I didn't really want to go into the school system. And she told me then that either I could apply for it and go make a change that I'm constantly complaining about, or that I better not ever complain again, because I had an opportunity to make a change and I didn't do it. So I had to swallow my pride and say, you're right, that it does absolutely no good for anyone to sit around and complain about what's going on or how things should be if they're not going to take action. And I was one of those in that moment, and she pointed that out pretty quickly. So I applied for it, and and they had a math interventionist job at the high school. So I became a math interventionist and basketball coach after 1 year at the middle school.
I knew how much he loved basketball and how much he loved Henry County. We had talked about his senior year and maybe the struggles that the team had there, but just, him going on and playing basketball even further. And then we talked a lot about, building a future. So we talked about the youth program, not just middle school, like getting that Henry on the chest of young men when they're in first and second grade. And let's see what we can do. Let's build by competing with each other, but let's get out and play other teams too. He had so much energy and was just willing to do that, willing to invest. Because when you coach, it's not just you. You're investing your entire family. When we got Derek, we weren't just getting Derek, we were getting his whole family, and I think you see that when you're in games, they're always there. So, I wasn't the one that, we had a committee that made the choice, but I feel like obviously looking at it now and what he's built and how good they are just is a testament to his work ethic and the investment his family's made.
He's very, very supportive. It takes a special person that's confident in what they have done and do to step away from a position that they have been in for 10 years and was successful at, and to not jump in and, give advice around every corner, but only when asked.
I knew everybody would pitch in and help. It's just such a wonderful place where people are about the kids. So I just felt like I wanted to be available to him, but I didn't want to be a roadblock or overbearing in any way.
Kept Rick Shetman on staff, and he'd been around the game his entire life and coaching his entire life, and that was even down to, I didn't remember how to get to all these schools and different places I hadn't been to in such a long time, and schools had built new gyms and different locker rooms were different, places were different, so he knew all those things. So even down to how to get places was very helpful. So, everybody was super supportive.
Derek is really the fifth coach here at Henry County that I've worked under. And when he came in, I made a comment, I'm not breaking another one in. But the transition is, I think, anytime when you're a head coach, it's easy to be an assistant, because an assistant, you know things, you think you know everything, but when you move one chair up, it becomes more difficult. And so you come in with an idea of what you want to do and how you want to do it. But in high school basketball, you got to play with the cards you're dealt. You can't go get people to play your system. But his transition, the transition that he came in as a first-year head coach, it was a learning experience for everybody, and I mean that in a positive way. That I watched him grow up, I watched him play, but to work as his assistant, we had to develop a relationship in how we thought about basketball and what we thought about basketball, and experienced a lot of times as an assistant. Like I said, he's the fifth head coach that I've worked under here, the second time that. You sit back and you offer information, but it's something that we learn together. And as the years have progressed, I'd like to think, and from last year, and I think where we are right now, we're pretty much on the same page.
I think the change, the life change that I had for that whole year of figuring out how to be a teacher, figuring out, it had been 20 years since I had done algebra or geometry or anything math oriented in that way, and so trying to figure out how to reteach myself all those things so that I could help kids and do my job, and figuring out how to run a high school basketball program, figuring out how to teach basketball to high school kids, and trying to meet them where they are while I'm still trying to figure out where I'm at. And so I don't know that in that first year I ever grasped what was going on at all. And there was lots of things that I let drop, and things that I wish I'd done different, and things that I would change now and have changed now and do differently now. And so that whole first year was kind of a blur. I'll never forget the feeling of standing on the sidelines for our first game versus Anderson County. And when the national anthem started to play, my JV coach at the time was Neil Stivers, and I had called him when I got the job and said, hey, you want to be the JV coach? And he said, yeah, and we went on talking about something else, and I hung up, and he called back like 30 minutes later, and he said, were you serious? I said, yeah, I was dead serious. So I remember we were standing on the sidelines, the national anthem was playing, my stomach is in my throat, and to hear him behind me lean up and say, I never thought we'd be standing right here. Everything after that was a pretty big rush of emotions, but it was a pretty surreal moment just to be in that position back in the gym, and involved in the way that I was.
Middle will be there, okay? You can make that middle pass from the top when they're angled out that high. Good, wrap it around. Good, turn, look. Right, gets to here, wrap it around. Good.
We won the first game of the year. We beat Anderson County. I think it was 72-66. And that was my first career win, my first game of the year. So Kevin and Sam and all those guys made me look a whole lot smarter that night than probably what I really was, and I'm sure luck was on our side. So, that was a pretty special moment, and I still have the game ball from that first win. Hadn't won a district since 2011. Before that was 21. It had been 40 years before that since we had won a district championship. Runner-up a few times, but so there was pressure to try to keep that going, and we didn't get it done. We won 11 games that year. Part of, I'm sure a lot of that is on me, inexperience, applying a different system than the guys that were there were used to, and part of growing pains that I knew we would have. If you're results driven, that year obviously will linger for a while. You know, it's hard. Those years are hard from multiple aspects, not just from losing, not from not winning, but from the fact that you have great kids that work hard and do what you ask every single day, and you're just not getting the results that you want. That group of seniors that year, that was a tough year for them. For them to come in the gym every day and still go 100% every day and give everything they had to the cause and to trying to get better. And, you know, and some of them to see their playing time go down as the season progressed and some of the young guys playing over them. And for them to maintain their character and continue to do what they're supposed to do speaks volumes to who they are as people and to how successful I think they'll be in life. So that year was a tough one to keep positive and to keep mentalities going. And, you know, like I said, we didn't have any of the results that we wanted. But, you know, I feel like our guys can still look back on it and say, I did what I could do. Anytime that your young guys can start to get reps at the varsity speed and the varsity physicality and how that game is so much different than middle school freshman JV, it bodes well for future results. So, you know, that's obviously in the back of your mind as you get through those tough parts of the season, that we're constantly working on next play. You know, you don't want to give up anything in the moment. You want to still be in the moment and appreciate the moment and give that moment what you've got. But you know, we'd be remiss to say that we don't also prepare for future moments. You know, that year was just a testament to us staying the course, even though, you know, our results in, you know, 22, 23 weren't what we wanted. We still believed in what we wanted to try to do with the personnel that we had, and we just had to stay the course and keep teaching those things and keep really hammering all the concepts that we were wanting them to understand. You know, and we made adjustments along the way, little things here and there. If you're too stubborn to adjust and change some things, if you don't like change, you'll dislike being irrelevant even more. So we don't want to be irrelevant. We want to, yes, implement our style and our system, but we'll still make changes along the way if that's what benefits what we're doing. So I think just those guys having another year of understanding what we were asking them to do, another year of just mental and physical maturity, all those things make a big difference and learning how to compete.
He gave me a perspective of what him and his coach, they were hitting a brick wall. It happens to all of us and all of it. And so, you know, he reached out and I said, well, let's look at it differently. There's a different perspective.
Through that year, I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere with what we were trying to do. So I called him and asked him to come and sit down with me, and we could just say things out loud. So maybe I could find some clarity. So we sat down in the office, and he told me to pull out a sheet of paper with a court drawn on it and just tell him what I'm trying to do. So I think we went through a baseline out of bounds play that it had a couple of double staggers in it. It had a couple of twists in it, and so I was just talking through those things, and and he stopped and he said, Coach, he said, that sounds really good. He said, but I didn't even understand what you were saying.
You're looking at it from your point of view. What about the kids? What about the players? Are you looking at it from their point of view? Are you looking at it from everything that's going on? Have you, looked at it from this angle or that angle? And really, basically, it was all about, for lack of a better word, stop looking at it from your point of view and the coach's point of view and look at it from somebody else's.
You may know exactly what you're talking about, but the words you're saying don't make sense to anybody else. And it wasn't necessarily how you were saying them. He helped me realize that it just came down to the terminology that we were using was so much different than what any of them had been used to and accustomed to.
And then it clicked. He's like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that piece and that piece. And it kind of clicked, and I know it made a difference in the season.
We didn't necessarily need to come out and have a full practice the next day of trying to understand these concepts. We needed to have a vocabulary lesson. So we started there as coaches, being sure that we were all articulating the same thing, using the same words, and that our guys, now that we defined what those words meant, and I think that was a big turning point for us, that we didn't realize that we knew what drag screens were and how we were wanting to come out of double drags and flares and all these sorts of things, and we were just using words that they weren't used to. They had bested us most of the time in the past, and that's a narrative that we needed to change, and we finally started to get a little bit of that going last year.
There's only going to be one winner when the season's over totally, and so a lot of the post-game comments is, remember what this feels like. We're going to come back next year, we'll do something different.